So welcome to the Video Content Management Strategy for Enterprise Content Platform panel. Kind of a mouthful. And this will be largely a panel discussion. We have three excellent panelists here to talk about. And these are from the perspective of folks who have specified, deployed, and manage enterprise video content solutions. My name's Tom Wild. I'm the CEO of RAMP. And our context is more from the solution provider side. We've developed a next generation video content platform for media and corporate applications. So we'll be going through this here over the next 45 minutes. I thought we'd start with is introduction by our esteemed panel here, and then I'll do 5 minutes on sort of the state of enterprise video, and then we'll jump into the discussion section. Should be a lot of fun. So thanks for coming, and why don't we just go right down the row here. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little about where you live in the organization, et cetera.
I think we can do that. My name is Greg Poston. I'm the Director of Visual Communications for Semantic. And we sit in the marketing organization, but are responsible for video production, post-production, and presentation for global video for Semantic. So anything from high-end marketing, commercial type pieces down to the sorry I can't be at your conference type executive stuff.
Great. Scott?
So I'm Scott Cezurek. I'm from the CME Group, which is a large financial exchange and the parent company of the New York Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Board of Trade. Our department initially grew out of broadcast video and started administering online video for the company around 2005. So at this time we do all of the external video content for the company and in addition handle all of the enterprise video content. So much like Greg, that is everything from commercial pieces or press releases, market commentary or partnerships with news networks on the external side, down to compliance videos and training on the latest piece of technology that IT is working with.
Great. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Hanley. I'm the Senior Manager of Digital Media for KLA-Tencor. KLA-Tencor is a equipment manufacturer for the semiconductor industry, 40 years in Silicon Valley and a global operation at this point. My team produces almost all the video and other content for the company. We originally started as a training operation under HR and have grown it out to become the primary developer for the same range of video you were talking about, the high-end conference kickoff, product marketing kind of content, all the way down to the, hi, I'm sorry I can't be here. And we just did a few of those this last week. And we're currently engaged in exactly this topic of building a content management front end to integrate all our different video and other content elements in the company.
Fantastic. Well, let me just walk through a couple slides here, and then we'll go through our discussion topics as well. I think that what we see today is this sort of perfect convergence of devices, bandwidth, and platforms that have made video go mainstream within the enterprise. Certainly we've all witnessed the dawn of sort of the YouTube era as sort of the V1 of video. V2 was sort of the initial video content platforms solving the basics like hosting, streaming, and encoding. And now we see videos growing in terms of application across many different use cases here. We'll dive into more of those as we go into the platform here. But the state here of enterprise video is very much becoming ubiquitous. And we'll talk about employee-generated content even as sort of a next trend, as these devices make it possible to shoot high-def video from any smartphone connected to any Wi-Fi network. As this happens, the cost of producing video is going down. What used to be more of a broadcast mode, right? You needed an expensive studio, expensive equipment. While that still exists in pockets, for example, things like live town halls where production quality and those sorts of things are very important, the overall cost of creating video and serving video is dropping precipitously. And so anytime you get more of something, you have a search and content management problem, right? And that's what we're seeing with video today. Roll back 10 years where documents had rolled onto the enterprise in a big way, primarily driven by things like Microsoft Office, Adobe PDF. We're seeing that now within enterprise video. This explosion of content creates challenges around search and content management. And that's going to be the main topic here that we'll discuss. In fact, in many ways, video is the new document. Things that we've all done historically using documents will be supplanted and replaced and enhanced by video. And that means that all these platforms that have been invested in over the past decade, content management, knowledge management, enterprise search, all these things are going to need to understand video as a medium and treat video in a way that documents are treated today, right? And that pertains to how you discover and search this content, how you interact with it, how you distribute it, and that's primarily what we want to focus on here in this particular panel. These stats are growing and really becoming stunning. By 2016, almost 90% of consumer traffic on the web will be video packets, almost 90%. So the internet itself has to fundamentally reinvent itself to handle this tremendous traffic load. Gartner surveys regularly report that video is growing in the enterprise 50 to 200%. And by the end of 2017, almost half of all searches done within the enterprise will be satisfied by a video or an image, a multimedia content result. So really some stunning trends here in terms of how multimedia is going to influence how we all communicate. And if any of you have teenagers, you've seen that they've pretty much given up on traditional text communication. I mean, it's all Snapchat and Instagram and these mediums. And as they enter the workforce, they're going to expect to be able to communicate using multimedia as well as sort of a fundamental right that they believe they'll have in terms of how they're going to collaborate within the workforce. So let's dive in. As we go through the discussion topics, raise your hand while the lights are a little bright and hard to see in the audience. Just raise your hand and say question, and I'll come back so we can work you in as we go through the panel here rather than saving it all to the end. So I thought maybe we'd start. I think what is really interesting here is how our large enterprise is trying to understand how to address video as a content type and the various use cases. So maybe let's go down the line. If you could spend a little more time, where does the responsibility for video live within your respective organizations? And kind of talk about the reporting structure up to what C-level exec is responsible for video, or is it truly horizontal? So let's start there if we could.
Well, so within our organization, within Semantic, video sits within marketing. Now, that's not been the case
Within marketing?
With the whole time of
Yeah.
history as well. It's kind of moved around. It's been in communications for a while. It was in HR for a while, and it's been in learning for a while. But right now, it's currently in marketing. And even though it's in marketing, we service all of those different departments. It doesn't matter where you are within the company, as long as you have a video need and you have some dollars to spend on it, we'll be able to service that need. And most of our content that's externally facing is on the marketing side, though.
So are you more of a service bureau internally? People come in with requests and you guys service those, and then I'm sure you have sort of bigger charters as well that you're servicing on an ongoing basis.
Very much so. We get requests from anyone within the company that says, I want to make a video. And then we kind of take that in, deal with any kind of money that needs to be, because we are a service bureau, we basically charge back for any content that we create. And then we go ahead and produce that product. Now, there are themes and content that's coming down directly from my direct management from content marketing that we're going to produce as well. And we do, from time to time, actually, within the group, come up with content as well that we will produce, mostly on the social media side. We're talking more of the stock and flow type of content for social media, where maybe we'll produce one piece, but we'll cut that piece up into 12 different pieces, little bite-sized chunks for distribution over social media.
Great. Scott, how about you guys?
So we exist within the corporate communications department of our company, and that was initially because it was a large part of our branding strategy to do broadcast television prior to the advent of online video. So when we decided to start doing online video, we were in a unique situation where we were basically a production unit, and we were trying to get massive amounts of resources from an IT department that already had a very strong business focus. So our products are ultimately technology products, and it was very hard to get anyone in IT to decide that they wanted to own any part of this sort of massive task of administering an online video system. So our entire enterprise distribution system is something that pretty much grew out of us trying to do this marketing and corporate communications content on the external side. That being said, so it's a little odd that we are within corporate communications given that so much of what we do now is on the back end of these technologies. On the other hand, I think, and this might be true for all of us, I don't know that there is any one division that it makes sense to put something as overarching as video communications within, only because you're servicing so many clients all throughout the organization, from videos that you know will get 5 views, 5 very important views, to videos that are going to get thousands. So.
Yep, great. How about you, Jeff?
Well, since we started as a training operation, we're officially still under HR. But you know, as everyone has been saying, we serve so many customers around the company that that's actually sort of in name only. We do a lot of work for corporate communications and product marketing. We do a ton of work for individual divisions around the company that need everything from web pages built out and training modules developed to cataloging, archiving, and making accessible and searchable years and years of video content. The company's been doing video for, well, I mean, I get asked to drag out pieces that were done in like 2000, so I know that before my time there, they were doing video at least that far back. And until fairly recently, a lot of that stuff was just existing on servers somewhere in the company with, you know, the guys who knew where it was long gone. And so we've been engaged in this effort to kind of bring it all together and catalog it and make it searchable. And to do that, we've deployed a video platform. We've added a digital asset management component to that.
Yep.
And then we've added a front end, which, you know, is the content management part. And it's all kind of coming together these days into something we're calling the Digital Learning Center. And the Digital Learning Center is a place where anyone in the company, any individual or any group in the company can have a presence that leads directly to the video and other assets that they want access to. So for us, you know, to take a little bit of issue with your comment, video is the new document. For us, video is only one of the document types.
Right.
We have so many more, and we're a very heavy IP company. I mean, intellectual property is, you know, a big chunk of what we are. And so being able to get access to it and being able to restrict access to it when needed is a critical part of our function.
Great. So interesting, you know, three different perspectives, 3 different departments in terms of how video has evolved at these organizations. Maybe I'll throw one out for sort of a jump ball. Talk about on-prem versus the cloud. What drives those kind of decisions, and do you see it moving in one particular direction, or will there always be, you know, sort of a balance of applications for both? But how is the cloud as a general enterprise computing strategy affected how you're approaching video inside the enterprise?
We don't do much in the cloud. And I think everyone's very, very sensitive about IP and being able to control it. And so mention of the cloud is not very well received, at least as far as...
and it's primarily a security issue, yeah,
it's
as opposed to an infrastructure issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of do 50-50.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of stuff on-prem. Usually it's our asset management where we're dealing with large, you know, master files that we don't want to be able to push up to the cloud. But a lot of our presentation and distribution is on cloud. Anything we can put in the cloud is better for us, then I don't have to deal with IT. Sorry if I offend any IT folks out there. But if I don't have to deal with my IT department and go through all those hoops of getting something deployed, they like it better because they don't have to deal with it, and I like it better because I actually get it done. But we absolutely have to have some stuff on premises because, you know, putting up a 100 gig file to a cloud service, okay, it just is way too slow.
Right.
And we just don't have that kind of bandwidth. There is always a security component of it. I mean, Semantic is a security company, and so we have very strict regulations upon what we can put up and what we don't put up. And the vendors that we've used for a cloud have had to go through some very rigorous security loopholes to make sure that they met all the needs of our security agencies.
Scott, talk a little bit, if you could, about sort of what's the right handshake between what you guys work on and IT, right? It's come up a couple times already in the conversation. So how is that partnership or tension managed? Because obviously video has the potential to be highly disruptive on a corporate network. So curious what you've experienced there.
Yeah, so I think pretty much all of our content is hosted on the cloud at this point, and that is because these sort of, we don't want to put IT in a position where they have to do any sort of deployments of our hardware at all. I think that where our relationship with IT comes into play is in things like making sure that we have information security locked down. And because we're in the cloud, that's something that we do have to constantly examine. So whereas if everything, at least our enterprise content was on premises, that might be the type of thing that we wouldn't negotiate. Because of that, we have a very documented system of exactly how these things are going to work together. The other thing this allows is, because so much of this content is in the cloud, it makes it possible for IT to throttle the way they're handling video in somewhat a more effective way than if they weren't using things like caching servers. So if we were deploying everything on the internet, our company has expanded globally quite a bit over the past few years, and it's really easy to lock down the amount of bandwidth that's being used by the global offices when they're just using public internet access. And I think that that sort of internet scaling is something that has been, there's been no video impact sort of on this gradual pushing of our global backbone to our global offices, because that's something that's always handled in a public way.
And what's your sense? I mean, Greg, how does this get paid for inside of Symantec? Is it, if one department's using a lot or consuming a lot more than the other, one department's producing a lot more than the other, how is Symantec attacked sort of the budgeting process and paying for this? Because it does have both sort of horizontal and vertical applications.
It's a great question because, someone has to pay for it. It's not free. From a production standpoint, the group that requests the content pays for it. So if one of the product marketing teams comes to me and says, I want to make a video on my product, we say, we sketch it all out, figure out what the creative is, and then come up with a budget for it that they approve. From the hosting and distribution of it, my group is funded to take care of that. So we kind of keep the lights on, and we have corporate funds to do that. And so we don't have to push those costs back to any of those departments at all. It's like, hey, once your video is hosted, we'll keep it up and running, and if 2,000 people hit it, great. If 200,000 people hit it, even better. So it's really on us to kind of maintain the lights.
Is that consistent with you guys, or do you handle it differently in terms of how it gets budgeted?
Well, I have a pretty substantial budget that I work with, but we also charge back. But
for both production and delivery, or one or the other?
primarily production, almost never for delivery.
Yep.
It's really hard to measure delivery. I don't know really how you do. It's not like there's a meter, like the cabs here, to measure what's actually being delivered. And in fact, the more you deliver, the higher you, or the more successful you are. So consequently, there's sort of a disincentive, if you were to charge people for delivery costs. But we definitely charge back for production. But it's also, I'll be honest with you, it's a little fast and loose. We don't really, if the CEO comes to me and he wants to do one of the hi, I'm sorry I can't be here messages, he doesn't get charged back for that. And I have kind of a flat rate set up for product marketing. I have kind of a 3-tier rate card for product marketing. If I can do it in-house, if it's a fairly easy production to do, it's one rate. Something more elaborate. If it involves global travel and I have to get on a plane with a bunch of gear, then it's the third, it's the highest level on the rate card. But I wouldn't want to sit down and explain it to an accountant.
Right.
Yeah.
I've noticed. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in our case, so we don't do chargebacks at all. We've always been a department that existed because from the very earliest moments of online video, our company saw that this was something that was good for brand and was good for communications internally. This becomes more complicated when we start talking about video as the new document, which at least at our company it very much is, or it supplements every document.
Sure, yeah.
So if, let's say we have a press release or we have something like that, there always is a video asset that goes with it. Internally, if there is a new product launch, we're starting to use a new technology in-house, there's always a little introductory video that goes with it. It is much more expensive to deliver, especially in my case when you're hosting in the cloud, than it is to deliver a PDF. And it is sort of an interesting case to, I think, for a lot of enterprises as this grows to say, when is the organization going to decide how much is worth spending? You know, to what point does something that is a supplementary document or just a communications document, not on the enterprise side, not something that has ROI, what is the actual value of this? And I think that's something that luckily our organization is not looking into right now.
Yeah.
In a sense, when they're questioning right now. But it is something that I think a lot of organizations are going to be focused on in the near term.
Yeah, I've noticed in a few of our more recent customer engagements that this notion of tracking in BillVac is coming up, that they want the ability at least to see what departments are producing and consuming the video, and it's a little tricky, but it's definitely come up more frequently of late.
I mean, for us, it was a matter of scalability. We were getting so many requests for content that the budgets that we had couldn't cover it. So the only way we could scale up was to be able to charge back for those. And then most of my team, I have an 8-person full-time team, and I have about 45 players that are my bench players. They're all freelancers, and so I have to pay them. You know, anytime they come in to shoot or edit or produce or whatever, I have to pay them.
Yeah, out-of-pocket costs.
Exactly. But it gives me great scalability. I mean, we've done in excess of 160, 170 titles a quarter by being able to scale up that way. It just wouldn't have worked with just having a fixed budget.
I was going to transition a little bit into sort of more of the production side and delivery side. Any questions on this topic in terms of sort of the business implications and organizational implications of enterprise video? Yeah.
If you have to distribute the cost, you were talking about the cost of production versus delivery. You mentioned delivery. My intuition says that delivery would be a fraction of the cost of production, or is this the same from your?
Absolutely. The actual distribution is a very minute cost of the actual production of the content. And in my case, we actually have budget within my group to keep those lights on. We don't go back and charge back for how many views your video got because, you know, to your point, that would be counterproductive. We don't want to. We want to limit people viewing stuff. But from a production standpoint, that's where all the money is spent. And it can be, you know, a big commercial piece. It's a $500,000 production that's really only produced, you know, a minute piece, down to your $500 the sorry I can't be here video. Like turn on the camera in the studio and go roll. So that's what we charge back for, is those costs of actual production.
And where it becomes a real issue, though, is when you're building out the infrastructure to deliver the content. Because, you know, the incremental costs of delivering a video here and there to, you know, to your global audience is one thing. But when it comes time to make a major investment in a platform or to upgrade your platform, then the question really arises, okay, who's paying for this? You know, is IT paying for this? Are they paying for the annual upgrade and support after the initial investment's been made? So that's actually where the biggest, I won't say argument, but the biggest discussion is in our company, is to, you know, to who's going to pay for the initial investment. Then the, you know, the incremental stuff is pretty much a wash.
Other questions on this particular topic? Okay. Before the panel, we had an interesting sort of pre-call to come up with some topics, and I think it was you, Jeff, who mentioned sort of this notion of trying to evolve this thing that's been put in place, because you've been doing video there for a long time. How many sort of outside vendors do you work with on the kind of hosting, streaming, and production side? I mean, how complex is your footprint there? Is it 3? Is it 10?
Well, my production team is about 8. And that's everything from web developers to shooters to voiceover artists, writers, you know, PowerPoint developers, that sort of thing. We hire almost no production vendors to speak of. I mean, anyone who's been doing this a long time remembers the day when it would basically cost you $50,000 to have a video crew even show up at your campus. And the results were always kind of dicey. Sometimes you got a really great product, sometimes you didn't. And so it didn't take the company very long to figure out that having an internal team with some institutional memory and some awareness of the corporate culture was a lot more efficient and fundamentally a lot cheaper than hiring an agency or a production company to come inside. So that fairly small group of people for a 6,000 employee company manages a sort of a four-cornered structure of a learning management system, a content management system, a video platform, and this digital asset management. We're a lean, mean machine.
And Scott, on the delivery, encoding, streaming side, how many vendors do you work with to make your platform go?
I mean, ours is fairly, all right, on the distribution side, it's fairly straightforward. I think we use maybe 3 vendors, and that includes things like, so our department does all the live webcasting for the company, not video conferencing, but to desktop webcasting. So including all that stuff, let's tie rich media into our video. It's probably only 3 to 4 vendors. However, the area where it gets a little more complicated for us is we're also a small department. We're 7 full-time staff, and that includes coordination. So it's basically 5 people globally. And where our system internally gets complicated is in our digital asset management, which is more of a live sort of a production environment, a global production environment, than a distribution system. And so our production technologies are a lot more complicated and nuanced at this point than our archive technologies, than the things we actually use to deliver our content on a daily basis. And it's been easy to tie just a few technologies together to give us everything we need on that side.
Greg, we were talking about live a little bit. Talk about sort of the live spectrum in terms of use cases, and you mentioned a cloud-based solution versus on-prem solution, and what are some of your tips for folks on doing live well? Because it's easy to do live poorly. Right?
It's really easy to do live poorly. Right. Anyone can do live poorly. Doing live well is definitely a combination of good production techniques, for sure. Good camera, good audio. I mean, those things are a given. You have to have that. But then kind of looking at what your audience really is. For us, we have Semantic's 21,000 people globally, so it's a larger company. And we also have a very unique audience type. We have employees. We have kind of our enterprise business-to-business market that we deal in. And we also have the very large consumer market. So anyone with a phone or a PC has heard of Norton Utilities, right? So that's one of our big consumer devices. So we really have 3 different audiences we need to broadcast to. Internally, it's pretty easy. We use multicast, and so it's fairly easy to do. We also use a big CDN to attach to our remote workers through VPN things and things like that. That also gets us to our business-to-business folks. People that were going to come to our website, watch some kind of webcast or a product launch or something along those lines. And then we have our consumer audience, the fickle, wonderful consumer audience. And we want to be able to give them a very rich media experience. We wanted to give it to them on any device they want, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a computer, anywhere, anytime. And we also want to engage with them more than just more of a one-way type of situation. So we use another content delivery network specifically for that audience, where I can do things like polling questions and chat and get a little bit more of a rich experience. Also a platform that allows us to go to any device, anytime, from anywhere. We were broadcasting from CES, from the show floor. And being able to get from that to a CDN and out to anyone who's wandering around with a mobile device was very important to us.
Yep, excellent. Jeff, you touched on a big project, and I think Scott, you mentioned this underway as well. Big project, Jeff, to integrate with related platforms, content management, DAM systems, et cetera. Video maybe historically has been a bit of a silo. So what do you have experienced in terms of the challenges and best practices in trying to make video play well with those adjacent platforms? And in part, why? Why do it?
Well, I would advise anyone who's thinking about tackling that challenge into thinking there's a golden solution out there, because I don't think there is. I mean, at least I've never found one, and every time I've looked, it's always been kind of a futile effort. So, I mean, we have a, gosh, at least 10 years old, rather kludgy learning management system that doesn't like to talk to anything. We have this fairly new, up-to-date video delivery platform that is quite good and works really well for us. And then we've got this massive archive of old content, some of them just flat video files, some of them other document types. And so what we elected to do was basically go open source and use an open source content management system that with XML, and it also works pretty well, integrates pretty well with Cold Fusion, which is what our learning management system is built on. To take this really malleable content management system and use it as the front end, because it plays really well with these other very disparate elements. The search is really very good, and it's very, very easy to develop. I have one developer in Chicago who does most of the work for me, and when we need a special function, he'll go out and find a plugin. And the application we use is called Expression Engine, and it's fundamentally it's used by a lot of people as a blogging software, but it's also a very effective content manager. And with my developer from Chicago, Han Communications, we're able to talk to almost anything inside, and we're able to build it out. And it's so easy for us to build out a special request. Someone wants a web page that is essentially a directory of all their content. It's a piece of cake to build it, and it's a piece of cake for non-web people to maintain it. Essentially they're just entering data in data fields. They don't need to know any HTML. They don't need to know, any coding really to speak of. All they need to be able to do is enter data, and as they publish a new video, they just need to know where to plug the directory listing and make it available. And then that content is also very easy to control, because it's not just a matter of making it available to people. You have to be able to lock it down to only the people who are supposed to have access to it, and that's a key part of our challenge.
Greg, let's build on that one for a second. Semantic, one of the biggest security companies in the world. How do you guys approach user authentication, content security, directory structure, when video is often sitting in this other repository but needs to talk to some other kind of user authentication system? So how have you guys attacked it?
Absolutely. So most of the content that we have for internal communications is still stored in the cloud, but again, our cloud provider had to go through some very nasty security loopholes in certifications to be certified. One of the things we do is we actually lock players to pages, so that player cannot, even if you go in and scrape the code, you can't move that player anyplace else. It has to be locked on that page. The other thing we do is encrypted streams between our content delivery network and that player, so that if you try to take it, you still can't. If you try to get mid-transport, you still can't get it. So for internal content, that's what we're doing. We're locking it down hard. For, of course, external content, it's open to everybody. And
the more the better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Scott, you touched on search a minute ago in terms of, what do you do when you have a huge archive of videos and you're trying to make them searchable and discoverable? I mean, video is inherently difficult to search, right? It's a binary content file type. So what are some of the approaches you guys have taken to address that?
Yeah, and that's also an issue that ties into, I think, back into CMS integration and exactly how you're going to approach that. On our side, even our internal video, the stuff that is secure and locked down, may appear on one or multiple of 5 different platforms that are being used by different departments of the company. So we have our traditional intranet where most people come for information, but then there's also Confluence pages and wikis, and there's any host of sort of SharePoint, places like that. I think that when it comes down, effectively, when you're managing video, you are managing it in its own place in a sense.
Yeah.
So our archive, it's funny to hear you mention that 2000 seems old, content that was produced in 2000. Ours goes back to, we just went through a digitization process, and our content goes back to, we have film from when the Board of Trade was built. So we're talking about the early 1900s. Our video department started in the 70s, and nobody ever threw away a tape. So at this point, we have tremendous amounts of content. And the real question isn't how do I make my video searchable, right? So we're very careful about metadata and tagging to make that possible. The question is, for all of this metadata that I'm entering on my DAM system, how am I going to get that into these 5 different platforms that exist all throughout the company? So that is something that we still deal with on a day-to-day basis. As great as your tagging procedures are, you still have to figure out how to integrate this, whether it's your online video platform or your DAM system, with everything else that's going on at your company. And I think that as companies decide, well, we're not going to have a single intranet, we're going to let people communicate in these 5 different ways. You have to figure out how to get all of this metadata you've carefully constructed into those 5 different places, and for us, it's a constant challenge.
Yeah.
Scott mentioned,
go ahead.
mentioned community, and I think that's a big issue right now, and a fairly new one in the enterprise anyway. There is an expectation now that all these content types have a community play around them, and you've got user-generated content for the companies that permit it. And as everyone knows, search is only as good as the metadata that it's associated with. And if you've got users all over the company uploading content of one form or another,
Right.
their content is only really searchable if they do a good job of adding the metadata, and that seems to escape a lot of people.
Most of them. Yeah, most of them.
Let's go with that one for a minute. So this is a good segue to employee-generated content. So what are you seeing? What are the use cases? Why do employees want to share video content? What are some of the top use cases? And how you think about it in terms of policy review and user management of that? Maybe we'll start down here with you.
Sure. It's a big issue, actually.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to create video. Everyone thinks they can create video because
Right.
everyone has their phone with them now, right? And just so you know, when you're making video on your own, please do this, not this. Okay.
That's the first tip. Yeah.
My editors usually have it taped on their doors. But it's something we're struggling with as a company because everyone wants to do it, and we really want to enable people to do that. I mean, we can do it outside, right? We can go create our little Instagram videos or our Vine videos and push them up, and all is good. So right now, we're allowing people to do it. We're having people come up and they push it up to an area, and then we kind of take it and review it and push it up. Now we know that cannot last. We're going to have a more automated mechanism for allowing people to create their own videos, because my team as a bottleneck to get all that content up is just not going to work. So we're actually actively investigating what we're going to do for that. Is there a place we're going to have people upload video to, and then that will just be kind of a special own user-generated video content site that then we can kind of cherry pick off of that. But it's something we're actively looking at right now because it's a concern.
Scott, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, central administration is really important, the same way Greg mentioned. So all video does need to come through us to effectively get into the online video platform, let's say. I think the complicated issue is that nobody needs our online video platform anymore, necessarily. And if somebody wants to create a piece of content and they want to post it in a departmental wiki somewhere, well, they may decide to just go and host it wherever they host the rest of their videos. That might be on their own YouTube page. And all right, barring sort of information security concerns, that becomes something that most companies, I think, don't want. Most companies probably want to have the content going through a single place so that it can be reviewed.
Right. And there are some places where retention's required, right? Financial industry, health, et cetera,
Yeah.
Data retention.
Yeah. So I think that the issue becomes how do we scale the administration capability and not have a bottleneck of content coming into us.
And just to your point, that's absolutely why we're trying to figure out a solution to it, because everyone is just going out to YouTube. They'll just put it on YouTube. We recently did a little search for semantic content on YouTube, and we found like 400 different channels, which becomes a big issue. It's like, okay, everyone's just pushing up, so we need to make it easy for folks to be able to use kind of the central repository and not be the bottleneck, to your point. Because if we make it a bottleneck, they'll just go find another way around us.
It's still the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And it's not fun to be sheriff. It's really not, because you don't want to stifle the flow of information in a world that's expecting more and more of it all the time, and in an employee community that is expecting more and more of it all the time. But you also don't want IP just escaping out, into the wild without some kind of control. And then there's also the performance expectations of people. People think they can shoot video. You touched on that. Often they can't, or they don't do it very well. But the user of that video wants it to perform. So people are posting all kinds of odd formats, and they're posting, badly recorded video. And then, the only person they have to, the only person the user has to contact is the video department.
Right.
And it's like, we didn't produce it, we didn't edit it, we didn't post it. I can't guarantee that it's going to do what it's supposed to do and be available to you. So we haven't worked out all the governance of that yet, at all, by any means. And I think it's fairly high on the agenda, because the quality of the camera phones is getting better and better. GoPro is everywhere. And there's not much you can do about it except to kind of establish some rules and establish a culture whereby or within which the expectations of quality and protection of the company's intellectual property is just a given. I mean, I almost think that culture is more important than a rule book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Questions? We've got about 10 minutes to go, so why don't we move towards questions? Here you go.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you are dealing with sort of risk or legal issues yourselves in terms of somebody's got to look this over and make sure it's all good before it goes out. How do you balance with those people the ability for your teams, forget about the user-generated stuff, to be flexible and responsive? Scott mentioned you're putting out a video for every press release. How do you get this to work in a way where you can turn around quickly, get it done, and push it out without having to get bogged down in one of those reviews?
My only answer to that is practice, and it's not always fast either. Yeah, I think in our case, the general turnaround time for a video press release or something like that, which is to say basically a 90-second talking head video with some minimal graphics, is within a day. So the video itself is done before the person at the top has a chance to take a look at it. And I think that I don't think that there is a fast way of making sure that those things become streamlined, at least at our organization, because at the end of the day, you're always waiting for an extremely busy person, the last person on that list, to have time to look at it. So for us, it is once you produce enough video content and people start to understand the value of it, that moves up in the priority list. But it's not something that happened overnight for us.
And for us, having a really good relationship with the legal team is key. They know what we do. They know how long it's going to take. The other thing is, for a lot of those kind of scripted presentations or talking heads, we try to get the scripts approved ahead of time. So even before we shot it, that script's already approved. So, and usually they come down from like our comms team, who's working directly with legal, or with our finance team. So they're very much in tune with what's going on. So even before they even come in the studio and say a word, their content's already approved.
Other questions? Yeah.
What about some of the outside enterprise video managers, platforms that are out there? Have you considered any of those? What is the cost benefit of doing a lot of this from in-house versus outsourced?
Are you talking cloud or just?
Video management.
Yeah. I'll just repeat the question. The question is, what kind of outside video content platforms or vendors have they had experience with? Scott, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, it really is a matter of just looking at the cost of implementing something internally. So some of those products that we've looked at, let's say we were going to bring everything inside, because right now we actually are using an online video platform to even manage our enterprise content. I think you mentioned this before, but there is a massive initial sort of cost outlay to all of this. It's a long time before you can start looking at it and saying that my incremental distribution cost is minimal. And I think
Fully amortized, you mean, if you're trying to amortize
exactly,
the whole, but yeah.
right. Just to say, over the next, you would have to turn to your IT team and say, over the course of the next 10 years, it will be the case that every video only costs a dime to deliver or something like that. It is a sort of massive initial cost outlay. And I think that for a lot of companies who aren't yet at that point, unless there is a security requirement that forces you to house that stuff inside, that the cost of having, video has now become an essential means of communication. It's not the nice little extra thing that's on the page, and it's not cute that you can broadcast your town halls and your all-employee meetings, because there's people who can only watch at their desks. When there's that expectation and you need fallback on those things, and you want to be able to deliver the best format of video that currently exists, I think people are going to increasingly be always pushed into areas where they're using services who can scale those things much quicker than anybody would be able to on their internal side.
And it's not like a light bulb all of a sudden goes off in finance people's minds or in the executive's mind that video, there's a good idea.
Yeah.
You have to win that mind share with the executive team and with the company culture. You have to prove your usefulness and your value, so that when you come to them, because it's not cheap, when you come to them and say, we can do a better job delivering video to your employees, but it's going to cost $500,000, or it's going to cost $1 million. You better have some credibility with them, because you can quickly be dismissed as just another bauble unless you've proven your value to the company, to the executive team that's going to sign off on that kind of expenditure. We just invested in a major platform. We work with Polycom. And I'll be honest, one of the key reasons was we had a long time investment in Accordant. And so we were able to leverage that history with Accordant to make the Polycom decision more economical for us. But we looked at the other guys, and it was incredibly expensive and kind of mind-blowing how much it takes to do that. But I'm not a finance person, I'm not an analyst. It's really hard for me to break down the value to the company of that kind of investment. But fortunately, I think we had a little juice with the executive team, and when the time came, they signed off on it.
Last question. Any other questions? All right, just a reminder, they asked me to remind you 5 p.m. cocktails on the exhibit floor tonight, so be sure to check out the sponsors. Thank you, gentlemen. Very good panel, and thank you all for attending.